Hi, I'm David Katz from thepostgame.com, and today we're joined by the director of the Kobe Bryant documentary, Kobe Bryant's Muse, Gotham Chopra. Gotham, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a very busy man. You just had a 30 for 30 on ESPN last week, and now here you are with your Kobe documentary.
I know, it's been look, you know, in this business, you just sort of count your blessings when it's this busy, because it's not always like this. So yeah, it's been crazy, but I'm enjoying it.
Fantastic. So let's just get to it. You call this movie Kobe Bryant's Muse. Who is Kobe Bryant's Muse, or what is Kobe Bryant's Muse?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you watch the movie. There's one thing that has been consistent his whole life, and that's basketball. Like, basketball has always been there. It's been the thing that gave his life purpose. So basketball is his muse.
So I'm curious, what is Gotham Chopra's muse?
God, if I said anything about my wife, she'd probably be upset. But you know, like, I love my work too. I mean, I think it's one of the things, you know, Kobe and I had in common and kind of bonded over. Like, I love what I do. I love storytelling in all its different forms. So I think that's what drives me and kind of keeps me going and passionate about these projects, for sure.
Talk to me a little bit about the inspiration for this and where it came from and what that pitch process is like, because while Kobe Bryant is a public figure, he seems to be a pretty private person, anything outside of basketball. So how did that process work?
I mean, you know, it's interesting because these are non-scripted, you know, films, and the process for this was very organic and sort of evolved. I'd gotten to know Kobe more casually a couple of years ago, and over that time had started to get to know him. He was certainly at a time of his career where he was thinking about life after basketball. So he and I sort of talked more informally about, you know, this quest to understand, I would say, the anatomy of greatness. Like, Kobe's somebody who is obsessed with what drives people to be the best at what they do. I mean, it's certainly something that he has experience with when it comes to basketball, but I think he was thinking a lot about it after basketball. And so we had talked a lot about it, and he had said to me at some point, like, I want to do something. I want to, like, make a film about this, a documentary. He knew that's what I did. So I didn't really know what the narrative was, I guess. And then when he tore his Achilles about a year and a half ago now, I sort of saw an opportunity, like, oh, here's something we can document, and this other thing that we want to talk about can sort of be the guts of it. Like, the spine is going to be this comeback. Are you going to be able to come back? And, you know, meanwhile, the substance can really be like greatness, and what does that mean? So that's how it started. And, you know, Kobe, to his credit, like you said, was a very private person, but just sort of said, okay, let's do it. And I think I just caught him at a moment in time, and we started, and then over time it morphed and kind of found its own way.
You talk about the fact that he's looking at the end of his career. So you've spent a lot of time now with this aging superstar, this legend, watching him go through yet another injury while you're shooting and probably kind of look at his own basketball mortality. What was that process like, in watching a guy who's so proud and has been so successful see these last few moments of his career come and then pass on?
Well, I think in his eyes, he wouldn't say it's past. You know, it's just another challenge. I mean, I think Kobe is, I mean, it's not fair to describe Kobe Bryant as one of the brightest athletes you'll ever meet. He's one of the brightest people. He's incredibly self-aware. And I think this film for him was both therapeutic, but also, like, it helped him sort of learn more about his process. So I think, you know, he would say this is another challenge. He's very aware of the fact of his age and kind of where he is in his career and the physical limitations that he's facing, I guess, on the court. But he's determined to come back, and I think he's adjusting his game around that. And so I think there are definitely challenges. I mean, he definitely, like, you know, the shoulder injury that he recently went through. These are things he had his moments of, like, questioning. But he's also so resilient. It's, you know, he's been injured before. He's kind of had issues with teammates before. Everything he's facing now, he can go back to the index and find something where he dealt with it before. I mean, that's what happens, right? When you've played in the league for 19 years and you've had both successes and failures. So Kobe's very sharp in terms of being able to manage, like, the ups and downs of his basketball life.
So you knew he was going to be the subject of this film. How involved in the process of making the film itself the editing, the storytelling, the kind of the themes that you want to explore. Is that something that he got exceptionally involved in? And
Yeah.
did he expect to get that involved at the beginning, or is it something that once he got into it, it
Yeah.
changed and he got very much interested?
Yeah, I think it evolved. There was a phase of this movie at the beginning that was pretty traditional, like he was subject, and I had a creative team that really, was behind the camera, so to speak. I think over time, like as he started to get used to it and started to understand the process, he really got engaged. I mean, I now describe to people, this is not a film about Kobe or on Kobe, it's a film with Kobe. And I mean that in like, a complimentary way, because also as a filmmaker, I mean, all you want is an engaged subject. Like the more honest and present they are, the better the film. And in this case, it really became first person. And not just like, interviews, but, he really wanted to understand, okay, like, well, what does a DP do? What does an editor do? What does a graphic designer do? How does the composer, what's their process like? There's no version of Kobe Bryant that's sort of passive. He's a very active and engaged guy. And most people have seen this like on the basketball court, but I would say like, no, that's in every aspect of his life. He gets really, engaged.
I mean, it's fascinating because you think about he has absolutely nailed the process of becoming a phenomenal basketball player.
Yeah.
And you get the sense he's dissected every element of that into its granular level and succeeded. Yeah. And here you have him in this creative process. Do you see, as he moves on, an interest in him being a filmmaker and continuing this process and telling other people's stories? Because it's a different thing to tell other people's stories than tell your own story.
Yeah. No, we've talked about it at length, and I think that's one of many things he wants to do. And guy's 36 years old. I mean, he's got a long life ahead of him. He's obviously achieved so much on the basketball court, but I think he also understands, like, I got this whole long life ahead of me. So I do think storytelling, filmmaking, and understanding other people. I mean, that's how in some ways this started. It was less about him and it was more about his fascination with other people. And how did Steve Jobs, accomplish what he did? How, looking back at history, how did a Michelangelo, and Kobe's a really cultured guy. I mean, he grew up, in Italy, so he's been exposed to a lot. Obviously, by being who he is for the last 20 years, being the celebrity in the city, he's been exposed to so many people. So I think for him, actually, the first interest in all of this was other people, but then, I kind of also put him in this position like, well, okay, but let's tell your story. Let's like funnel all of that, filter it through you.
So what's interesting is you talked about him being interested in finding out what's driven other successful people. In this documentary, you go out and talk to other people about Kobe. What was it like sitting in the room with Kobe while he's seeing some of these people that he may have admired growing up, other people he played with, people he respected, and some people he might have had some issues with along the way? What's it like sitting in a room with him while he's watching these people be very honest about their thoughts about him?
Well, so this film had many incarnations and iterations, and I went out and talked to, Shaq, Phil Jackson, Coach K, teammates, adversaries, et cetera, et cetera. And Kobe watched that version of the movie or like a rough cut early on, and he was like, this is great, but it's not first person. Like, it's not, this is stuff you can pretty much Google. Like, what most people are saying about me is stuff that's already out there. Like, nobody's ever heard me talk about, like, my experience. So the version of the movie that, premieres Saturday night on Showtime, it's all Kobe. It's entirely first person. And, I have this amazing stuff. I have to say, it was very valuable for me to go and have a chance to sit down with Phil Jackson and understand, how he sort of helped Kobe mature. But in terms of like the movie, it's Kobe, and it's Kobe unfiltered.
Do you think because you have this 360-degree view of this superstar that you have a better understanding now of what makes great leadership and what makes greatness at that level?
Yeah, I think, I definitely, I learned a lot, by being around Kobe. I've been fortunate to be around, greatness my whole life and be exposed to a lot of people. But there's definitely, a lot of consistent threads through that. And in Kobe's case, there's discipline, there's focus. I mean, there's first of all, luck, right? Like to find what it is that you love so early on in your age and not as, for Kobe, he discovered basketball when he was 6 years old and he never questioned it, And so for him, like that that knowledge of I love this thing more than anything in the world and I will sacrifice everything to be the best. I mean, that type of intensity of focus and then that relentless pursuit and discipline of it is something that, I still see in Kobe.
What do you think, now that you know him so well, is the most misunderstood part about him? What do people who think they know him because they see him on TV every night, what do they not know about him that they really should?
I mean, look, Kobe on the court he's a killer and he's mean and he's the Black Mamba. And I think, there's a superhero quality, that's his Batman identity. Mm-hmm. But there's a Bruce Wayne. There is a pretty humble guy, a pretty gracious guy, a really nice guy, a very, very curious guy, when it comes to stuff off the court. And, that's not a side. I mean, I think over the last few years, people have started to see that. When he goes on Jimmy Kimmel, when he does this, he's fun. And
on Twitter, on social media now,
he's really sort of put himself out there and kind of let people see who he really is. But I still think there's that intimidation factor because he's still that guy. And he is the guy with his teammates and his opponents that's pushing.
Do his teammates like him?
I think they respect him. I mean, I think, and I certainly know because I talk to guys like Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Steve Nash, Reggie Miller, all these guys. To a man, I mean, they're that's a guy who pushes you to be the best that you can be.
Does Kobe want to be liked or just respected?
I think Kobe is very comfortable with who he is at this stage of his life. And so it's not about being liked or disliked. He's always been a polarizing personality. I think now more than ever, he's fine with that and he's okay. And I think this movie probably will reinforce a lot of those, perceptions about him. The people who love him will love him even more. The people who kind of, can't stand him, they'll find plenty of things to sort of reinforce that.
What drives his competitiveness? Did you go back into his psyche and his upbringing and things like that and try to figure out, or have him kind of figure out through this process what really drives him?
Yeah, I think, this is very much a reflection on all of those things that sort of drove him to be who he is. So, I think Kobe's always been this sort of outsider character. He was the young black kid who went and grew up in Italy. Then when he came back, 8 years later, he was strangely the Italian kid now in suburban Philadelphia. Then when he came to the league, he was a teenager amongst men. So he's always sort of been this outsider trying to prove himself to belong. So I think that's been a very motivating factor. But he's also got this insatiable desire to be the best. And the great thing for me as a huge basketball fan was to be able to sit down with Kobe and just talk basketball and to watch tape. And Kobe, it's not even fair to describe him as a student of the game because it feels like a cliche. That guy can look at game tape of Oscar Robertson and point out to you see how he uses his body and then show you tape of what he did. And everybody knows that Kobe modeled his game after Michael Jordan, but he'll show you watch his footwork. That's what I didn't watch him switching hands and dunking. I watched his footwork. And so he loves the game so much and he studied it so much. And he's also, when he does that to you, he'll tell you, Tex Winter, you know, his old kind of mentor did this to me, and that's, you know, he was my Yoda, is how he describes him.
Right?
Yeah. So it's really great. I mean, he's a true basketball genius in that way.
And the fact that you're a diehard Celtics fan,
Yeah.
what's that dynamic like when you're watching tape together?
So, I mean, one of the great moments for me of this film is Kobe said, okay, you're a Celtics fan, let me show you game tape of Larry Bird.
Wow.
Let me show you, like, why Larry, you know, wasn't the strongest guy, he wasn't the fastest guy, God knows that, you know.
Couldn't jump the highest.
Yeah, he couldn't jump the highest, like all those things, but watch his pump fake. And it's not his shoulders, it's not, you know, it's his eyes. Watch his eyes, you know. And so Kobe, like, sees these things. And so, yeah, I mean, it was fun. There was a lot of trash talking. There's constant trash talking with Kobe. You know, he told me all the inside stories of the 2010 finals when the Lakers beat the Celtics. So I really...
Did he talk about the finals that they did not beat the Celtics?
Oh, he talked about that, 2008. I talked a lot about that. But yeah, there was a lot of, you know, a lot of kind of chatter about, like, all those different series and, you know, how they sort of won in 2010.
What are Kobe's biggest regrets? Does he talk about the, kind of the downside, the dark side, the
Sure.
negative side of what he's been through in the last 19 years?
Yeah, I mean, the film speaks for itself, and I mean, he absolutely, he's very candid in this film, very personal. I mean, it was part of the deal. Like, if you're going to do this and you are going to, be first person, then you got to talk about it all. And I think he realized that really early on. So he went to all of those places. And I think, one of the things Kobe learned early on through, whether it was in Italy or kind of later in his life and on the court and off the court issues, is he could take those frustrations, he could take that energy and that emotion, that sadness, that anger, that rage, that frustration, and put it in his game. And that's really where this like Black Mamba, like
Fuels him.
mean guy came from.
We know why his fans will want to see this. Why should someone who's never liked Kobe, doesn't like the character, tune in and watch this film?
I think the people who haven't really liked Kobe, like Kobe's an incredibly layered person, and if you are somebody who enjoys sports, I mean, he is an iconic personality, right? He's been in the game for 20 years, so that in of itself is interesting. But he is also like one of these people who is amongst the best at what he does, and I think his willingness to sort of be honest and open and kind of pulled apart and dissected, makes it a really interesting film.
Does he like business? Because here in Los Angeles, he has an icon, Magic Johnson, who's built an incredible business career. Does he want to emulate that at all from a business perspective, or is he more of a media guy?
I think he is a business guy, but I think the thing, and this is one of the things I was saying earlier, there's a humility to Kobe, and I don't think he's the guy who's like, oh, I'm gonna just come and sort of become some mogul just because I'm a big celebrity. Like he seeks people that he emulates, like business people, and he wants to learn from them. So I think, do I think he could be that? Yeah, but Kobe will approach it with the same sort of relentless curiosity and discipline and learn and put himself in a position to succeed. Not just a guy who's gonna like sort of rely on his celebrity to...
Are there any good stories of him reaching out to people that people might be surprised that Kobe has a relationship with?
Anna Wintour, Ariana Huffington, John Williams, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Hilary Swank, like he just, he gets curious about people, and he's one of those people obviously who can pick up the phone and call people and they respond. So yeah, I think, it's a long list of people, and oftentimes it's outside of sports.
So other than you taking a little vacation, you need a break after all this work, what's next for you? What are you thinking about?
I mean, I kept on telling myself I'm going to take some time to think about what's going on next. This film, like literally 48 hours ago, I was, in an edit room trying to get it done. So I haven't had like a minute to even think about that. And, now obviously like helping to promote it and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, the bar is pretty high because Kobe is, he's an incredible subject, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him. And so I don't know, like I'm just going to let it come to me.
That's a good way to do it. I'm sure every athlete has started reaching out to you once they heard you were doing this documentary on such a high-profile athlete. Is there anyone out there that you would like to do next? Is there one personality that you said, you know what, I want to break into that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Boston fan, so there's certain icons.
I may have seen some of that on Facebook.
Yeah, there's certain Boston icons, present and past, that I'm fascinated by. But I think one of the things that's really interesting about Kobe, and for me too, is like I was not a Kobe fan. I mean, I was a Laker hater, my whole life. It's part of my DNA as a Boston fan. And so that sort of conflict where, it's almost like turning your perception is helpful. And there's certain Yankee icons and others that I think now, maybe that's how I need to kind of approach it. So we'll see.
I can't wait to see it on Saturday night. Thanks so much for your time, and best of luck with the movie and everything else.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Gotham Chopra here on thepostgame.com.